Ledlow. My partner, Trevor Nelson, we're the co-founders of HGA Fundraising. We help nonprofits raise more money with the most profitable auction items in fundraising. Today, we have a great guest. I'm going to let Trevor do that, but make sure you stay to the end because we are going to give away something. Everybody's going to get a chance to be a winner today, and we're so glad you could take some time and share with that with us. So with that, Trevor, I'm going to let you take it on.
Awesome. Thanks, brother. Appreciate you. And thanks so much to our guests. Thanks, everybody, for coming. Kristi Scott is a friend of HGA and a friend of HGA Nation now as well. So
welcome to the nation.
I appreciate There's no membership dues or anything like that. It's just so fun. Yeah, come anytime, come and leave as you please, that kind of thing. The door's always open. But no, Kristi and I met and shared an awesome conversation. Actually, let's plug, check it out. Hey, Nonprofits Raise More Money. Kristi and I shared a cool conversation.
Podcast.
Whoa. What did I say? What did I say? Did I say podcast? Sorry. Anyway.
No, you didn't say podcast. I was just echoing.
Yeah. No, please. Check out the pod that we did. It was so good. Please. Really, really awesome. And got to know Kristi, and we had to have her back on as soon as possible. So we chose this where we could spend a little more time, get a little more interaction from guests. So as Jason mentioned, please keep the questions coming the whole time. We've got an expert in email marketing, and I want Kristi to tell us, obviously, her company, what she does and all that good stuff, because she'll do it better than I can. And then, Kristi, I think it's important that you tell folks where you were at before and your experience, with Salesforce and whatnot, if you don't mind. Just
me too.
I think it's because you've seen what you're doing from so many angles, and you've definitely seen it from the nonprofit angle. But long story short, we've got an expert. Please take advantage of the fact that she's here with us. Ask questions, Q&A function at the bottom, chat feature, the whole nine. And it's our pleasure to share this hour with Kristi Scott. Thanks so much for coming.
So nice. I would love to share a deck. I think it's got some good visuals so that everyone who's here can learn a little bit more about me.
Cool.
It's something we could have. But yeah,
you can share. I think just go down.
Want to share? You certainly can.
Absolutely can. You bet.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Kristi, tell us the name of your company and your consulting firm and just kind of how you got in the space, because I think it's fascinating.
Awesome. So yeah, I'm Kristi Scott. I am with Kristi Scott Social Impact Consulting. It is me. I run my own company. I focus on email fundraising for small nonprofits, specifically folks who don't have a marketing team or have a one-person development team that's kind of doing some marketing, and those are the kind of folks I help. And I got into the space because I had worked in-house in programs I started off in, and then I ended up in the fundraising space. And then I also did sales to nonprofits. I worked with hundreds of small nonprofits on their tech stack for Salesforce. So I was in the sales world for a couple years after I got out of fundraising in-house. And it was a very unique experience going from in-house fundraiser to sales. Yeah. But as I told the first company I worked for, they're very similar skill sets. And I know that a lot of fundraisers don't like to think of it as sales. But I mean, ultimately, ethical sales is sales. I think we often think of kind of the skeezy type of sales, like trying to trick people. And that's never been my view of it. Fundraising as well as sales is about connecting with the right people and sharing your message. So I'm very passionate about doing that via email, because what I saw in our industry is so many folks in small teams don't fully utilize their email marketing. They kind of treat it as kind of a billboard, like they'll send it out monthly, random, very inconsistent. And I saw this just being so common. And I felt really passionate about this tool that is such a huge return on investment for small teams, and they weren't using it. I'm like, we need tools like this where there's a huge return on investment, because small nonprofits don't have the budget to invest in a huge marketing strategy, right? They need a simple return on investment in their marketing. So that's how I got into it, because I just saw it across the board that folks weren't using it as well as they could. And so that's what I aim to do. I do a lot of teaching as well as working one-on-one writing for my clients. But I also do workshops to teach folks who can't even afford my services at this point, and so that I can make it more affordable for them as well.
I think it's awesome. Once again, not trying to use like weird moniker, but it's just low hanging fruit, right? I mean, it's just that there's the opportunity to share the story, the mission, the impact, the giving opportunities, all these things. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're the tiniest shop or the biggest shop, you still need to utilize the tool. You said something interesting in our last conversation where you're like, the barrier to entry is almost nothing, right? Like email, social organic is organic. It doesn't cost anything. Email's kind of the same. I mean, there's like a little bit of, maybe you use what did you, I don't think was it MailChimp that you recommended folks use or grab something like that? Or
Once you're getting started, MailChimp, it works really well. I use MailerLite for my own email list. I like them because for small shops, they have free automations on their free account. So I recommend MailerLite a lot because I believe MailChimp, you have to have a paid account for automations. Which if you have a large list, that works. Right. For folks who are just getting started or have a small donor email list, then I recommend they just make sure they have automations, because if you don't have automations, that's going to limit a lot of your engagement with your list. So yeah, tools like that. But really the best like email service provider tool is whatever you're currently using. So if you do need a new one, I might recommend something to you. But if you aren't consistently sending emails yet, don't worry about the tool you're using. Start with being consistent.
I'm glad you brought that up, Kristi.
Yeah.
And first, I think this is something really important for everybody to hear, because you said something, I really work with the small nonprofits. So do we. I mean,
yeah.
And the reality is I think the average FTE, full-time employees that average in the nation is like 2.5. So there's not very many, everybody is, I've never met a staff that said, well, we're overstaffed. I've never
we have
found a nonprofit
too many cooks in the kitchen.
It's always, there's way more work. We're having to do a lot, but I think that's really important. But something that, talk about that consistency piece a little bit, because it's what we talk about a lot. Better to be putting content out that's consistent versus not putting content out or just waiting for the perfect content.
Oh, we got to change the world with this
once in a while. Yeah.
Start posting. Yeah. Or start emailing. Yeah. Like I love that you said that too about the tool. It's like, just start doing it. How about we start there?
The tool can always be changed later, but spending too much mental energy on finding the perfect email tool is not what I recommend to most small teams, because ultimately you need to focus on having a consistent schedule of sending out emails. That goes into the year end, right? What I found is a lot of folks, they kind of, send out sporadic emails, and then year end comes and they're sending out a ton of emails and they're wondering why they're getting so many folks unsubscribing or getting frustrated that they're sending so many emails. Ultimately, it's because, half the folks are going to forget that you even have their email if you're not being consistent with sending them emails before that point, if you're only reaching out to ask for money. And making the ask is important. And I am like a huge advocate of sending all the emails during year end. We'll get into that more, but I think making sure you have the consistent schedule to begin with is so vital. And I may have mentioned it on the podcast, but I always recommend that if folks aren't sending consistent emails at all, at least do monthly to start off with, and work up to every other week, and then work up to weekly. And ultimately you want to have it weekly. Like
that's the cadence. That's the prescribed cadence. Yeah.
Cadence, because then folks remember you. You're going to have a more quality list too, because folks won't forget about you. So if they do unsubscribe from that weekly email, it's because they're not the right fit, or they're not someone
they're self-selecting out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Instead of having like, oh, look, we have this huge list. Let's email them a campaign for Giving Tuesday. Wait, all these folks unsubscribed and are dropping off, and we have this huge chunk. And then your projections are off too if you're relying on a huge list that you're not engaged with. And folks, they change their emails and things like that. So just making sure you are constantly engaged with them before. And I think I want everyone on this call, if you haven't heard this, like there's a $36 return for every $1 you spend on email marketing. The best return on investment you can get as a small nonprofit.
I've never heard that. Thank you for sharing that. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And I tell everyone because like we are literally focusing in on, how can we up our Facebook? How can we up our LinkedIn engagement? Things like that. And social media is very important. And there are folks with expertise in that who I am obsessed with, and it's important. But if you're not using social media as a tool to get folks on your list who care about your cause, want to learn more about your mission and your advocacy work, if you're not using it for that, to really cultivate a community that you then can contact directly, not just on whatever the algorithms move is that day.
Yeah, exactly. You're right.
Then it's a wasted opportunity. If you're spending a ton of time producing content for social media that you never reuse for your email list, that's another lost opportunity where if you're hustling to get stories to share about accomplishments in your organization and you're putting them on social media, that's great, but you need to also include those in your email. And I think folks get scared of like, oh, well, we can't reuse that same story. We did that on this. Folks who have seen something you share on social media or have seen something in an email, like they're not going to be upset that you shared it somewhere else. In fact, it's going to help them hear the story and pay attention to the story. And it's going to like solidify, oh, this is the type of amazing work this organization does with the funds that I give it. I want more of that. Let me give more to them. Right.
Absolutely.
And
well, they're already seeing that. They already see that in every other walk of their life. That's the point, right? I mean, it's just like it's not foreign, right? That's the whole point. That's like the elephant in the room. It's like that's what people see on the B2B side. We were talking, it's like, if you give, well, you should send an email that asks for feedback. And we were talking about that. If I buy a pair of sneakers, Nike sends me an email asking me for feedback. It's like, this is not like earth shattering. Like the earth did not move when I said that. This happens everywhere in our lives, right? So why wouldn't we impart the same strategies, especially with something that's so meaningful?
Exactly.
Right?
Absolutely. And the fact is, like, in this day and age where we're getting like our emails sold to random people, like emails from an organization that I care about is very meaningful.
More meaningful.
And the fact that, as long as you're ethically getting your list, like I tell folks, please don't buy your list, especially if you're a nonprofit, because there's something about that connection to your mission that is different than getting an email list from someone else, that you want to make sure that they're bought into your mission to begin with before you're in their inbox. And so having that connection with them is so meaningful, and folks get so excited if you're doing your emails well. Well, it's subjective. I have my like frameworks for how I do emails with my clients and what I recommend. But ultimately, like, it's about listening to your audience, like you said. And here's something I want folks on the call to really get is replies are something that are super underutilized in the nonprofit space. And when I say replies, it's putting a question or asking for feedback directly in an email that you send out to folks, especially those regular emails, but a campaign email too. It's really important to have replies where you are asking a specific question. Like if you share a specific story, like for example, I was working on a campaign with a client and they were sharing about, it was a fall campaign. So they were sharing about the fall and what it's been like in their work, like some personal stories. And they asked like, what's your favorite season? Like that's a simple question. And so that's asking folks to interact with your email. What's great about replies is you're getting that feedback from folks. They feel like, oh, I'm talking to a real person at this organization, which I highly recommend that the email you send from is an actual person in your organization.
Okay.
Not a no reply.
What? I'm sorry.
Not one of the no reply.
Yeah, please, if your emails say no reply, please change that and figure out how to change that in your email service provider. Because, and even something like, info at your website, like, please have it be someone specific in your organization and have it reply to that person. And yeah, it's just something that for me is really like, make it feel personal. Folks are smart. They know, like, it's not like a single email that was sent to them.
Right.
So having that like impact of it's someone at the organization, you're getting to know someone who's passionate and working every single day in your mission. Like, that's huge for donors and folks who are supporters who are just interested in your mission, right? Like, not everyone on your list is necessarily a donor. But you want them to become a donor or a supporter in some way.
Well, what is everyone saying? And I'm sorry I mean, I'm not comparing necessarily, but what's everyone saying on, on social posts and what have you? It's like people are craving connection. They're craving the ability to give feedback. And what you're saying with that is you're just breathing life and, and a humanness into an email campaign.
Connection, yeah.
Yes. That's what people are craving.
It's about connection. And if you are just saying like, oh my gosh, we need to reach this goal, this match goal, like, that's nice, but it's more about connecting them to the mission and showing how that match gift can help have more stories come out of what it is, right? More stories of success. If you're working in human services, if you're working for the environment, whatever that causes, if you can show the impact of that through a story, like an actual story about your organization, about someone you've helped, about an accomplishment that you've had, then that connection is going to spur folks to want to give and be excited to give. That's how I view email. Like, what's some way we can excite people and make it fun? Like, I know some causes are a little more serious. Like, I'm not saying that you should try to make it fun when you are dealing with maybe like heavier stuff like domestic violence prevention or something, right?
Sure.
But at the same time, like, there are ways to engage and make them feel a part of what you're doing through because it's like
people
personal, like, wide connection you can make.
So Kristi, I'm gonna just ask, okay, I'm all in, I'm sold out, I'm ready to go. You've told me, we talked about that, and any questions that have popped up, we will get to them. I just want to
for sure.
We just have some stuff we want to cover. So my very first email, give me some parameters or kind of give me some curves, if you would, of things to do with my first email. Because maybe I've been doing it, we're not real consistent, but I'm listening to you. I'm going to start my being consistent. What should I do with my first email?
Yes. Your very first email. Oh, that's such a good question. So I recommend focusing on making it as personal and simple as possible. Find a story in your organization to share. Something that you can share in about, 300 words is usually a good length.
Brevity of message.
Yes. Something that you can visualize, I recommend, like, if you're going to share a success story, like if you're talking about a specific client you've supported or a specific event you had recently that was very successful, have a photo to like visualize that and show what you've done or who that person is. And so I call it, I'm actually working on making this like a little more formal, but I call it like a 3-1-1 model. And it's like, essentially, actually, let me pull up my notes. Because
cool.
I call it the 3-1-1 model of writing a nonprofit email, because what it does is it helps you remember how to write an email. So 3 is like think of like share a story that like the 3 stands for 3 people, right? The one person is the person you're focusing on for the story. And again, nothing I say is set in stone. This is to help like your creativity in writing. And then the other person is whoever is writing it, right? So remembering that piece I mentioned about having it come from a specific person in your organization, someone who would be most familiar to your list, whether that's the ED or development director, or if it's like a story about a volunteer program, maybe your volunteer manager would be the one sending it, even if they're not actually writing it. And then making sure that the email has one visual and like one image, one photo, and then one call to action, right? So
And could the call to action be like the reply question, maybe, for instance?
So generally the call to action, I don't normally have it be the reply. The reply is usually just a little something extra. I'll have it as like the PS.
Okay.
Can be in some cases. I'm not like against doing that, but usually the call to action is something like, of course, donating.
Yeah, I was gonna say, give us a call to action that doesn't involve giving money, for instance.
Yeah.
Put you on the spot. Yeah.
Side of giving would be read our blog post on this issue, right?
Cool. Yeah.
So that could be something simple that's bringing them into like a bigger story, because often folks like linking to something that's more intensive is great, because then you can learn if folks want to learn more about that story. Like you can preview it in the email and then they can go out and read it, right? And then another thing is volunteer, of course. And then follow us on LinkedIn or share, like different things like that, depending on what you're trying to get them to do. Often it is going to be donate, especially if it's a campaign. Focus on that one action. The thing about that is don't only have the call to action once in the email. It needs to be throughout the email. I always recommend you have it near the top. If we call it like above the fold for folks old enough to remember newspapers.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I look younger than I am, but I do remember.
Me too. I was born in 1980 for the record.
I don't know what y'all are talking about. I'm too young to do that.
I was born in 1980 for the record. I might have you, Kristi.
I'm not telling you when I was born.
I barely made it. So, so above the fold is like when someone opens the email, they should see that call to action. I mean, it depends on how you write it. There's nuance to it, but I try to make it like a bold. Sometimes it's a button, sometimes it's just text that's like bolded that says, contribute. Yes, I want to contribute, donate today, those kind of things. I'm very like focused on text first with small teams because it's very personal and you don't have a full marketing team to design your emails.
Well, tell me what you mean when you say text. Do you just mean like font style and what have you, or?
Well, like having it look as much like a normal email that you would just send to one-on-one contact.
Personal.
Okay, so what I'm hearing you say is you're assuming the relationship. That's what I call it, assuming the relationship. If I were just sending a personal email to say, hey, hey, Kristi, check out this story. This is what our executive director just did. We just had this story. We've got Sam. Sam was, came through our services, and look at the success we've got. Wow, this is really cool. Be great. Would you be willing to help? And I think that's where it seems like that's where it happens with a lot of times with nonprofits. They get so caught up in well, how do I talk to somebody? Well, just imagine you're sending it to one person, but you're just going to also send it to 1,000. You're talking to that one person.
Yeah.
We're not talking to an audience and a crowd.
I think I kind of glossed over that too. I mean, that's the third person is that one-on-one relationship.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's like, it's your writing to one person and sharing one story about
that. I like that.
That's great.
One story.
I love that equation. That's great.
Yeah. So those are the three people you're focusing on. And then there's one visual and one call to action. Like you're moving them towards the visual should complement whatever story you're sharing. And then the call to action should connect to that as well.
And you're cool with that being an image or a video. And I wanted to get in the weeds a little bit. I mean, are you of the opinion or just, obviously rooted in your experience and what you do for a living, but like one link max? I'm cool with a bunch of links. Like, let's get in the weeds with that a little bit. Like image, video, links. Talk to us about that.
Great question.
Thank you.
Yes. So do all the linking. So what I do for my client emails is I'll have the call to action above the fold, right? And that includes mobile. Check how your email looks on mobile and make sure that they see that when they open it on their phone too. So above the fold, that image should link to the call to action as well. And then have it be one link. Ideally, this is ideally, and there are exceptions depending on the format, but if it's a campaign email, I think one link to donate is really important. And then have the image linked to it, and then have it's another call to action at the end. And then if there are any other appropriate spots in your language, I often will link to the actual, a few words in a sentence or two, just so it's there.
Yeah.
So I am pro having as many links as possible, but having it focus on that call to action, depending on the format. If it's just so that's more for campaigns. If you are doing something that's a more general, you do a monthly or weekly email, then still having most of the links be whatever your main action you'd like them to take is.
Read the newsletter, read the blog, whatever.
If
Yeah.
you're doing a roundup or something, then that's kind of a different story. But just to keep it as simple as possible, focus on that one link out to something, whether it's you want them to look at content or engage with something else going on, or if it's a
Can I go back to the consistency portion here for a second? And I've got a point that I'm going to make I'm going, and I want to see what your take is on this, Kristi. So, we start framing up an email and we start thinking, okay, we're going to make an ask and it's got to be this and we're going to do that. And maybe if we just add one more thing, or if we just do this one more, and the next thing you know, you've got this big giant thing that's, it's not really an email, it's a book that somebody wrote, put together with all these links and pictures and all the stuff, because we really want to make this powerful. And I was talking to somebody and I said, when in doubt, leave it out. And my point was just don't overthink it. We do this in our internal stuff all the time. Everybody's
we have a little bit of experience with emails. We have a little bit of experience.
And so we get into this whole thing of, when in doubt, leave it out, and just understand that it's going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's going to be okay. So do you have any more with that? Because where I come from is you're better off to send small little emails and be consistently send one every week than sending just one perfectly crafted. It's going to be the best email ever. Just do it one time.
Yeah. I totally 100% agree. And and you're right. This is an issue even in the for-profit sector, of course, right? Folks sending too much in their emails.
Yeah.
But what happens, and I tell folks this a lot, I say, your emails are not grant applications. Please don't write a full write-up of everything about your organization.
We're a 501c3.
Exactly. Don't put all the details. Don't use a lot of internal jargon like that. That's hard, right? And I have a recommendation for a tool that helps a lot with this, but it's called a Hemingway editor. And I use it a lot because what it does, it tells you what grade level you're writing at. And you should be, I think it's grade 8 or below is good.
Really?
Yes. Yeah, y'all should use it too, H.
8% words, T-Dog.
No, I mean, I've
the messages
seen that done.
flying by.
And I love the fact, because Hemingway was noted for his brevity. And so that makes
prose.
That makes it, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and so that is a key part, is having it be simple. I think nonprofits especially, we're very used to proving ourselves to donors. And I think we can't have the same approach to emailing folks in a campaign when someone is when you really have to, if it's a grant application or a major donor, that's a very different approach to communicating your mission than email. Email is, you have to think of as a one-on-one relationship. Often these are individual donors, right? So they are so busy. They're getting emails from everyone and everything, right? Making your email a chore for them is not going to work. It should be easy for them to read, short sentences. I do a ton of spacing in emails so that it's really easy to skim. I bold important sentences. make it so that someone who only has, I think, I forget the stat. I think it's like 90 seconds. Don't quote me, but it's like, it's
Yeah.
a very short span that folks, or maybe it's less, like 30.
I think it's about 9 seconds.
Yeah. But no, but it's short no matter what. I know that's your point.
It's like 9 seconds that folks like take to look at your email. So if you're not catching their attention immediately, they're not going to read the whole thing. Most folks who open your emails are not reading every word. That's just a fact.
That sounds like a given. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's not that doesn't mean they don't care.
That's not the end of the world at all. Yeah. How many emails are they getting? How many, you know what I mean, a day? I mean,
here's a great point. I do it on every email that comes along, unless it's just really something specific I've got to do. In my family, we call it doing the quick read, and that's just how we all do it. And that's what you've got.
So much coming at us. I'm sensitive.
We're just going to do that.
Let me ask you let me talk about that. And sorry, Kristi, I don't mean to cut you off, but like we're on to something here. Talk to us because we're just grabbing folks. How important is the subject line? We haven't even gotten to that yet. I can't believe we haven't said that yet. How important, and I don't care if it's not important at all or what have you, or contextual or
important.
Okay, cool. Like, okay, because I've gone down the rabbit hole since, doing email marketing since like 2012, where I was like, getting really, really serious about RE colons. You know what I mean? I was using RE colon before anyone else was, I thought, and stuff like that. I mean, like, let's talk about the subject line.
Subject lines are huge. So I love the tool subjectline.com. Are y'all familiar?
No, that's why you're here, though. That's why you're here.
I tell everyone about this tool because I use it for my client emails. I use it for my emails. Essentially, you plug it in. It's like an AI tool that will kind of like grade your subject line and say if it's like high quality, and it gives you like a breakdown of what's missing or what's helping it, the score. And so it's like up to 100 you can get. So it's kind of almost like a fun game because you can like tweak your subject line.
We're using it.
Just AI versions, like variations of it. So I love that tool. And I just went to the company that runs Subject Line. They have a big email conference every year. I just went to last week. So highly
cool.
Them.
Wow.
They are not tailored to nonprofits.
But that's not neither here nor there, right? Yeah. The person to put in.
Honestly, to be frank, like their emails are kind of like get a little intense. I think like there's some like they'll like resend emails a lot more than
No, totally. Yeah.
But like, don't do everything they say, but they're like an amazing tool.
Yeah.
And it's really helpful to say like, oh, I think this is a good, subject line, but then to see, and then you get ideas for better subject lines. And
Hey, Bev, it was subjectline.com. We had a question about that. It's subjectline.com. And then the other one was Hemingway Editor, which awesome. We'll put that.
HemingwayApp.com is Hemingway Editor, but if you Google Hemingway Editor, you'll find
it. We'll put it in the recording tomorrow as well, so folks can access that, and then a way for them to reach out. We're gonna put a way for them to reach out to you and put your business in the street as well, Kristi. So yeah, good stuff. Hey, I'm gonna get to a couple questions real quick.
Yeah.
Keith had a quick question. Thanks for sharing, Keith. Appreciate you being here. $36 ROI for every dollar spent on email. Where does that stat from, if you can cite it?
Constant Contacts.
Okay, far out. Yep, I've used them before, way back in the day. And then Bev.
An OG.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. That's where we all started. How do you send a picture if there's no attachments? Bev, typically you can embed images. Bev, I'm recommending that you reach out to Kristi. We'll put her email out and you can talk to her. Bev is a volunteer at a lovely nonprofit we had the opportunity to work with for a long time, and so that would be very, very helpful. But yeah, thank you, Keith. Appreciate you, brother. Hey, I like this question, Allie. I'm not going to answer it in my vernacular, although I have an answer. I want Kristi to answer it because she used to work for Salesforce. She's interested. Allie Shapiro Dandry said, "I'm interested in how Salesforce has helped nonprofits. Does it keep you more organized?" It sounds like you know what they do. Yeah. What other things can it help out with? And no, it's great. It's great that you shared that question, Allie. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Yeah.
Talk to us about that a little bit, Kristi. Yeah.
I don't work for them anymore.
No, you certainly don't. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. I just think it's a really cool. Well,
Salesforce.
we know multinational charities that use Salesforce for their CRM and then integrate into their mobile bidding software. So it's like that's a big step.
I love Salesforce. My caveat for small nonprofits is if you do not have the budget for an implementation partner for Salesforce to configure it for you, which tends to be like anywhere from like 15K up, depending on what you need.
Yeah.
I would say hold off on Salesforce until you can actually get that, because what I found, because I worked with small nonprofit accounts specifically, what I found is the folks who didn't have implementation partners often came back to me like, this isn't working the way that we want. And what about this? And folks who had implementation partners who set it up for them had like an amazing, incredible experience.
Right.
Even better if you can have like a full-time admin to manage it for you. And it is like the best.
Game changer. Yep.
Yeah.
No, cool.
Profit. You don't have budget for it yet, I'd say hold off until you're at a growth point.
So rock with
because
Excel,
some of the
rock
stuff,
with Excel and MailChimp until then. Yeah.
yeah, but there's also some other there's also some CRMs. There's some other things.
There are.
I'm just throwing some stuff out there for you guys.
Yeah.
What's the one that we're using now, Trevor, for
well, Oracle NetSuite.
No, not NetSuite. What's the one we're using on the marketing side?
Well, Zapify High Level was a
High Level. Yeah, Zapify.
Have you heard of High Level, Kristi? Yeah,
So,
High Level email
It's
marketing.
got a lot of functionality and a lot of things, and the price point is really good. Good.
I'm joking. You know how many of these?
No, I think that's really important
there. I mean, you because us on 2 so far. We got you on 1, so we're catching.
Well, that's the thing. When we're small nonprofits and somebody says, $15,000 implementation, that's not even to do it. That's a heavy lift.
That's a huge lift.
We're implementing NetSuite right now. It's a big lift for us.
Yeah,
and
enterprise side.
We've got some staff and things to do it really because we know, what we believe in, what it's going to help us do and run our company. But when you're talking about this, there are some tools like, High Level that is very good, very affordable. Yeah. You can really build some stuff that's going to help you manage all this because, we talk about donors and we talk about how we're going to communicate with them and when to do it and can we set up automation and all these things that's possible.
The answer is yes.
It is the answer yes. I'm going to tell you though, it's not easy though, is it?
No, it's going to take work and dedication and
time.
We keep saying consistency. I think that's massive. Patience with ourselves and be kind to yourself. We don't really do a great job of that in the nonprofit world or in just the world. You know what I mean?
But world especially.
But hey, I've been dying to ask you this question. We haven't even got. I think that we're touching the year-end stuff, and I think we're creating a really good base. I actually think that if we don't get to all of those things in the next 15 minutes, I think that we should just have you back. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw that out there. You would be doing us a favor, not thank you and the audience. But
regular guests on that.
I think that I really I'm starting to use the term raving fan again, and I really think that we're trying to create. If we're trying to not focus on the dollars, but focus on the people and the dollars come, we're trying to create raving fans. I had a really great conversation with that gal, Michelle, that I was telling you about, who I highly recommend you reach out to her and all that good stuff and correspond. And she said, your first donate, I don't know if you all feel this way. Great. The first donation that you receive is not the most important one. And I said, which one is? And she said, the ones after. And okay, and I go, okay. And we're trying to create raving fans, because I like to use that terminology. And I think that email marketing, email campaigns, things that you do every single day, I think that's a shoe-in for how to do this and how to tell that story and create raving fans. Let's just talk about, how can email marketing do that for orgs? Like right away. Give us the 30,000-foot view about how can we create raving fans and get past that first donation and what's coming next.
Yeah, in this day and age where we get really focused on kind of like vanity metrics, I think, in marketing, especially like how many likes you get, how many folks are engaging with that content. And I think, those are helpful, but they're not the end all be all. And having a group of supporters who really deeply care about your mission, like having a small group that cares deeply is more important than having a huge group of folks who kind of care.
Yeah.
And that's why I always tell folks not to be scared of unsubscribes, because that's not the right fit. And I know, I'm not gonna like quote Brene Brown yet or anything, but it's about like just having this mindset of connecting with folks who care and not being afraid to let go of folks who don't align with your mission.
You also say like focus on folks that you already have too.
Yes, we do. I mean, there's a crisis, right? With like, I forget the stats, but recently there's a lot of issues with retaining donors. And that is because in our sector, and I think just like our economy worldwide, folks are struggling. Our missions are important, especially for doing human service work. That especially is easy for us to get like overwhelmed. Like, well, we need anything we can get because we have to help these people. And so we can often get in this like scarcity mindset, especially in the nonprofit space, where we're thinking, okay, how are we going to make this happen? We just have to raise the numbers up no matter what,
Right.
instead of focusing on that relationship. And with folks who are individual donors, they're really valuable, especially, we don't have time to get into this, but try to get a monthly donor program going too. Like that's huge because folks who can't give a huge chunk of their funds have like a huge lifetime value as monthly donors.
They can give consistently. Yeah.
But if you are focusing on just getting a bunch of new donors and not taking care of the folks you have, it's going to be a lot more work. Like getting a new donor is so much more work and so much more effort than re-engaging someone who's already have supported you in some way, right? So go to folks, retain folks, focus on retaining them. And email is a huge part of that because like I said, you can ask them questions directly. You can get their feedback. You can demonstrate your value on an ongoing, consistent basis so that it's not, wait, they stopped giving, let me call them and panic and then try to talk them back into giving again. They see the value in what they're doing as someone who's donated or someone who, if they're an annual donor, if they're a monthly donor, whatever the cadence is, if they see this ongoing, oh, look, these stories they're sharing, they feel a part of your mission in a consistent way. And so that relationship can deepen more easily rather than just, end of year, you send a campaign where you share stories and they don't have time for it because they're worrying about buying Christmas gifts, right? Rather than, oh, I've been seeing their stories throughout the year and I've had engagement with their mission. Let me give now that they're asking.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you addressed all those things. I love that you addressed earlier. It's not the elephant in the room or anything like that, but like literally looking at it almost like a sales process, right? I don't think it's dirty. It's not a dirty word. I understand there's a weird connotation sometimes. I think we're past that now because there's enough people having the conversation that we need to treat this like a business because we're the people that we're serving. Jason eloquently says that, these missions are the safety net of society.
Mm-hmm.
And I really, really like that. And I really think people should should think about that and what they're doing and realize that, right? Because it's true. But back to the sales point, once you get people in the door, like we're not focusing enough on the people that we have in the door, so to speak. And I used to say back in my old sales day, that, because I didn't know I was a salesman until I got my first real gig and I was 24 and I started selling stuff and it was cool. And someone told me the best time, and I was aware of this immediately, the best time to sell something was right after you sold something. You know what I mean? So it's an email is just such a lovely methodology. It's such a simple and cost-effective methodology just to get right back in there again and retain people effectively and thoughtfully and all of these things. Those are givens. I don't think to talk to nonprofits about being kind in their messaging. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
You know what I mean?
I mean, that's why I love working on nonprofits.
Yeah.
Like, even though I run a business, like these are my clients, these are the folks I love because we really are like idealists and we want to like save the world, a lot of us. And
Yes.
then we're like, oh, wait, like, how do I send an email? Like, we want to help people, but then we don't always know like how
That
to
path.
engage donors. And most fundraisers just fall into it, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's not, few people are like, I want to grow up to be a fundraiser. So I think having that mindset of connection with your community is huge. And also thinking about strategies of how to like engage them to spread the word about your mission is a huge part of it too. I think, making email marketing, there's a strategy to it, but it's a tool to have like these more organic connections, and having a small list is not bad as long as you're consistently engaging with them. And then you can use other tools to get more folks on your list, whether it's someone who attends your event. But having those automations set up is huge too, right? So when we talk about like a new donor, having them learn about your organization on an ongoing basis, having a strategy for mapping out like, oh, here's an initial welcome sequence. And then in 3 months, we're going to have this email go out to them that's checking in, asking for their feedback. Things like that, where there's strategy to it, but it's also about maintaining the relationship in a way that feels very personalized for the person on your list, especially a donor. And I mean, phone calls are great too. I'm not like a phone call,
We're big.
but
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I am a big fan of calling new donors for small shops, like giving them a thank you call as well.
Good question.
You just you said something. I want to kind of just come back around to this because we're talking about emails and stuff. We really, in coaching sessions, and we've talked, and if you go back and listen to the hundreds of episodes we've done, we talk about this a lot, that saying thank you, it's never wrong time to say thank you. It's always good.
I don't know what to say. Say thank you.
Yeah. How do you,
Yeah.
Because, I'm going to say, don't have everything that you do be an ask for money, like Trevor mentioned. Have that time to be, how often between that? I mean, if you're doing one weekly, is doing it once a month, do you think that's okay? If it's to make an ask, if you're doing it monthly, maybe once every other month. I mean, kind of give us some rules of the road that you try to use with your clients as far as to ask without over asking.
So with my clients, I always encourage that your regular emails not be only like asks, unless you're in like a giving campaign season, then you may want to switch those out to be more focused on an ask. But generally, those emails should be sharing a story. Sometimes I do like a series, like, oh, here's part 1 of the story, here's part 2, here's the ending, to make it a little more interesting and intriguing. And then I have them focus on, call to action to get them more engaged in what you're doing. What I always recommend, though, is having a donate button at the bottom, like just at the very bottom. It doesn't have to be like anything prominent. Sometimes they just do a text donate button, because sometimes folks do just want to give. Like they read a story, they're really moved, and you're not explicitly asking them, but they still may want to give. So make it easy for them to do that. They are engaging with your emails. And then campaigns, I usually recommend at least like a spring campaign. Some of my organizations, we do fall campaigns. And then, of course, year end, Giving Tuesday and December, up to the wire of like December 31st. I think I have a number somewhere. I think it's like 26% of giving is like online in December. I think that's what it is.
I've heard 10% of all donations that happen in the United States happen in the last 10 days of the year, I've heard, and it's not because of tax deductibility. And Jason schooled me on this once. He said, "Why does it happen?" And I go, "I don't know." I said, "It's not tax deductibility. I know that." He's like, "No, it's because people ask."
Yeah. Because there's more asks. Yeah.
Everybody's asking.
It's interesting.
Huge. That's why Giving Tuesday is so big, because they're asking. And so that's why I believe in spring campaigns, right? Because those can vary, like the dates are not all at once. But so that's when you're really having a concentrated email like campaign going out asking over and over again. And you should still be sharing stories in that. It's just that the ask is more focused on, will you partner with us to continue to have this happen?
Yeah.
Kristi, speaking of sharing stories, and you made mention this, we were talking about human services, and like there may be something with domestic violence, and this was I don't hear your strategy on it, but we've got a client, that's what they deal with, and they're like, look, you don't understand. These predators, if you lace 2 or 3 things together, they'll figure out who this person is, where they live, and they'll come, we have to really be protective. And so I said, well, why don't we just create a composite? We're going to take, 5 different people, put them together for one story because we want to protect them. We're talking about minor sensitive subjects, things like that we don't want to have people's name out because somebody will, there's some crazy people out here. We don't want to do that.
Absolutely.
Is that something that you recommend that for people that are dealing with sensitive subjects, but where they can share the impact of what's going on, make it personal where people can connect to do that?
Absolutely. I'm so glad you brought this up. So I have a dear business friend. Her name is Diana Farias Heinrich. I'll type her name in the chat. She does ethical storytelling work specifically. She's also a nonprofit marketer like me, but that's her focus is ethical storytelling. And we just had a summit called the Ethical Nonprofit Summit that I was a part of hosting that talked so much about this. And Diana Farias Heinrich, let me put her name. Go for it, forget.
It's cool.
She had a very she had this almost exact experience and she tells it better. It's out there on the internet somewhere, and I'm sure you could find her telling of it. But she had a similar experience where she was working for a DV shelter. And long story short, there was a situation where she shared information about a survivor, and then it got the person who had been hurting them got out of jail, I believe it was. And so it was very upsetting. And that's when she became really passionate about ethical storytelling. So that's a huge factor in how I do my work, is making sure that we are sourcing our stories in a very careful and consent-based way. In fact, me and Diana, we did, there's a company called Memory Fox. We recently did a webinar with them on consent-based storytelling. And so that's something we can link to. I can send it to y'all later. I don't have it for me, but yeah, so composite storytelling is a great way to prevent that from happening. That's actually something Diana has recommended in sessions I've learned from her in. And so also, if you are going to share someone's story, even if you're changing their name or some details, making sure that you have a process in your organization for sourcing those stories to protect those survivors or really anyone that you're serving. But those very sensitive situations, I worked for an organization, we supported families who were unhoused, and we had a DV shelter specifically. So I'm used to dealing with those very sensitive stories, and just being having a deadline for those stories expiring is also important. I recommend that to my clients because you want to be able to check back in with that person, make sure they still are consenting to having their story out there and making it very clear. And, it's hard, especially for small teams, because we're so scrappy. It's hard to have a process for everything.
But it's necessary. Yeah.
But when it comes to storytelling, I think that is one of the number one things you need to be organized and have a policy around. And there's so much nuance to it, but I highly, highly recommend you check out Diana Farias Heinrich if you want more details on that. She is an expert. She's my go-to. I reference her. She calls it EquiStory framework for the way that I share stories in my client work as well.
Gotcha. Cool. Gotcha. Awesome.
Okay. Well, hey, we're almost.
Want to keep going. I want
to do this real quick. We're going to give something away, Kristi. We always like to give stuff away, and this is.
Yeah, but Kristi, I want you to come back if you have time and you'd be willing to. We got to keep talking about this. It's so good. So good.
Okay, we've got a winner, Sarah Greaves. Sarah, you are the winner today at the HGA free webinar series. So reach up, touch that button on the screen. Push a little harder. There it goes.
Sarah, did you know you were going to come on here and win something today?
We're going to see what she's going to win.
Come on. Jason's always giving away stuff.
All right.
400
Sarah?
your own bank, Sarah.
Yeah.
400.
400 HGA bucks. And what you can do is you can use that on any of our fundraising items for your next fundraiser. So congratulations. That's like real
An
money.
HGA team member will be reaching out to you, Sarah, to give you your $400 in HGA bucks. They were formerly Willy Wonka bucks, but we bought them out, and so here we are. Yeah, we have our own bank now. It's really fun. I'm just telling stories over here. That's
Kristi, thank you so much.
rock. So good.
Do a quick plug too.
I want you to. Go ahead.
Anyone who joins my email list before November 1st is going to get an email template for Giving Tuesday.
Fantastic.
Email template. So please, if you would like, actually, let me put the link.
Yeah, tell folks where to find you, Kristi, please. Yeah.
Yeah. So my email is or my reach out by email at KristiPScott.com.
Yeah.
I'll put that in the chat.
Kristi with an I. Yep.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. And then what I also, if I can, y'all have a second, let me grab this.
Yeah.
No.
I think that'd be very helpful.
To my email list. And what I do a weekly email list that shares all kinds of information about email fundraising tips. I do a lot of my own storytelling, so you can kind of see what I mean when I say simplify your emails. And then, sorry, my thing's being very...
Hey, we're going to put it on the email. We're going to put all this on the email. You bet we'll get that. And it'll go out there with recordings. Yeah. Listen, everybody, thank you so much. We appreciate you being here again. We'll see you next week back here. Same time, same place. Kristi, it was a pleasure. Great to have you.
Rock, Kristi. It's so fun. Yeah, thanks a lot. Let's do it again. I mean that. It's really valuable. Thanks so much. Thanks, everybody, for coming. Have a great Thursday afternoon. We'll talk to you all soon.
Thanks, bye.
Bye.